I think probably all of you, I'm gonna stand right here because that's just better. I think probably all of you were at the last big event, correct? Yeah? Good. So I was the final family speaker. So I'm gonna just go really high level, kind of what our journey entailed, how it started and where it ended. And then I want to get into something a little different with you guys today and really the impact. And I touched on it a little bit during my speech at DM29. But the impact that everybody in this room makes is something that is just, it's indescribable. It's very hard to put words to. So I'm going to take you back to 2018. It seems like forever ago, 5 years ago. May of 2018, Libby, my daughter, who was then 9, was diagnosed at STED with B-cell ALL, so acute lymphoblastic leukemia. We were inpatient quite a bit over the first few months, so roughly 6 weeks on and off, not straight. Came through that first, really the first 9 months of leukemia treatment is the most intense, and then you go into maintenance. Maintenance was fine. There were some things that had me concerned as a crazy mother, as she would like to put it. But she took her last chemo pill July 31st of 2020. So if you remember me talking about, in COVID, like she's laughing at everybody because they're all complaining about wearing masks, and she's like, join me suckers. Like this is nothing, like what good. And then finally she hated wearing masks, hated it, up until then COVID hit, and then she loved it. She's like, come on guys, let's go. So took her last chemo pill, everything was great, living her normal life. She got kicked off the bus. It's really kind of an interesting story, but so there was this kid bullying another kid, and my son, who's 2 years older, jumped up to help the kid getting bullied and pulled the kid, who happens to be their cousin, off of the kid he was bullying. Well, Libby saw this happening, and she literally 5-step kicked the kid. So both of my children got kicked off the bus. That was actually the last day that Libby got to ride the school bus. Lo and behold, because then we get to go back to school and they both tested positive for COVID. So if you remember back at the end of 2020, COVID was you have COVID and you're basically shut inside your house for a month, right? Because it was just horrible like that. So Christmas of 2020, it was just the 4 of us. So myself, my husband Matt, Logan, who is 23 months older than Libby, so 2 years older than Libby, and then Libby. It was a lot of together time during that time. Close corners, right? Not as close as hospital rooms by any means, but we were definitely ready for our separation. So January 4th rolled around, time to go back to school. Libby had been off treatment for about 5 months. Woke up in the morning, I heard her alarm go off, and then I heard a really big thud, and then I heard the blood-curdling scream. So I don't remember going up the steps. I don't know how I got up the steps so fast. Her bedroom was upstairs, and she was laying on the floor. She couldn't walk. So we'd been talking with her doctor, and her doctor still is at STED. I don't think her doctor will ever leave STED, but it's Dr. Zimmerman, Dr. Jessica Zimmerman, and Dr. Zimmerman is 80% research and 20% clinic. So she was actually on call. She was a fellow on call when Libby was initially diagnosed. So she worked with Libby from day 1 through the very last day. And we were going back and forth because Libby was complaining about hip pain and what are we gonna do? We need to get some MRIs. Because during that first 2.5 years of treatment, they are on such extensive steroid use for leukemia and really any childhood cancer. They do a lot of steroids. Does anybody know why they use steroids as a chemo? So when you take steroids, what happens? A lot of times people puff up when they take steroids, right? Well, that's because it takes all of those blood cells, everything in your veins, basically, and pulls them off of the vein walls. So they're free-flowing cells. So it makes those bigger, enlarged, you start getting puffy, but then that gives those cells the chance to get killed when that chemo's put in through the port, through the veins. So with that prolonged steroid use, they were afraid that she had some complications from that. At the point of her not being able to walk, it was time just to come to the ER. So we came to the ER. If there's one thing that I would advise you to never get between, for those of you who are gonna go into the hospital and visit kids, it's a cancer mom and lab results. They're really important. They're kind of our driving force throughout cancer, especially leukemia, blood cancer. So we'd been in the ER for about 6 hours and they still wouldn't give me the labs. I got angry, I'll be real honest, and I said, it's time. Like, give me her lab results now. We can't, they're not done. There's no reason they shouldn't be done. It's been 6 hours. So in the meantime, I'm emailing and texting her doctor, like, hey, what is going on? I need to know these numbers. Well, lo and behold, Nurse Joe, he's on a bus that drives around here too, but he is a nurse in the ER. He's the one who does all the Santa letters and things like that, that kids can drop in. And Libby had him a few times and just loved him. And he came in that night at 7 p.m. And he came in to me, he's like, what is going on? I'm like, they won't give me her labs, give me labs. So they took Libby to MRI because her back was showing. Hips looked good, back was bad. Took her to MRI and I'm like, I smoke. So I'm like, I'm gonna smoke a cigarette, Joe. I'm like, I need to get out of here, right? I need to step away, I'm gonna go call my husband. He's like, go back to the room. He's like, I'm gonna get you your labs. So the doctor came in and she said, hey, I wanna talk to you about Libby's back. And I said, I don't care about Libby's back. I said, I don't care about the back. I said, I want to see the labs. There's a reason you're hiding these labs from me. Well, if I let you see the labs, would you promise you'll let me talk to you about the back? Sure, just give me the labs, right? So I sit down and I read them. And I said, where's the differential? Well, a pathologist was not able to read that differential before they left for the day, like an actual pathologist to release the results. Libby relapsed. So 5 months. So in 3 years, Libby was off of treatment for 5 months. I called the nurse on Facebook Messenger and said, are you working tonight up on 11? She said, yeah, I have the room ready. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna tell Libby till we get up there. Because that's support. So Libby was so used to, in that first initial few years, having everybody there, right? We had dance marathon helpers, we had random volunteers. I don't know, there were tons of people in those rooms sometimes with us. You had no idea who they were. After COVID, it's not the case anymore. So it was literally Libby and I in those rooms. And I will tell you that that was the longest 5 weeks ever for both of us. She's, 12 years old, she's cranky, just found out she relapsed, just thought she had finished everything, and the last thing she wants is to be stuck in a 12 by 12 with her mom, right? So not having this group of people, not having her family rep able to come in and let me walk away for 20 minutes. It got to the point where I would come in and be like, go get groceries. I'm like, okay, good. So I could go shopping, I could step out, I could go get coffee and call, talk to somebody. Not having this group in there with us for relapse made it 10 times harder, and probably more than that. Even when you don't know the kids, so let's say it's not family rep, right? Let's say it's just you're in as a volunteer for the hospital. Go in and get to know those families, because that is what makes the big difference. I'm so thankful for the kids that they get to have people coming back in now, because it's really, really hard to just have child and parent, right? Or child and both parents. You get sick of each other. You get sick of each other at home throughout the week, right? Like, who would ever think that I would say that? I lost my daughter in June of 21. How could I ever say that I got sick? Oh, I got sick of her. Taylor, did you get sick of Libby ever? Yes.
Never.
Yes, never. She was a sassy, mouthy 12-year-old little girl, right? Like, she thought she knew everything. She knew a lot, but not everything. And it's hard. It's hard for me sometimes to say things like that, but on the flip side of it, that's the piece that's so hard to put into words to you guys as a group, because having you guys come in and let us walk downstairs, or you coming in when the kids are able to leave the room or the floor and taking them to events, right? Going to an event downstairs. We decorated cookies once. We went over to the gym once. Like, we used to get to run all over the place before COVID. And having those additional hands and those additional hugs and those additional, like, dance parties, right? I brought that up, I think, before, but like last treatment day, it's a party. You know, you just got your last chemo, we're gonna have a dance party in the room. And having more than just the parents there is something that's just, it's unexplainable. For not only the child, not only Libby, but for me as well. Because I can breathe then. And I can go back and try to get some of myself back, because, you know, for those 3 years, people didn't look at me and say, oh, hey, that's Nikki. People looked at me and said, hey, that's Libby's mom. And people still look at me and say that. And I'm perfectly okay with that. Like, the strength that Libby had, the sass that Libby had, the mouth that Libby had, but the love that Libby had. Libby had the love, she loved everything. If she didn't love it, she was going to tell you about it so you can make it so she could love it. But she loved everything. And when she was set in on something and dead set on something, she went hard. And she was going to do it to the best of her ability. So my biggest piece of advice to this group, with you guys being leaders in this organization, is don't be afraid to make contact. You have that family that's not responding, reach out again. You're emailing them, text them. I don't know if that's against your guys' rules, but do it. Because a lot of people give you guys emails that they maybe check once every 3 weeks. It's just what it is, right? Because you think about it, we have our work email, we have our personal email, we have another personal email, we maybe have this other organization email. Text them. Get involved. Get to know that family. So it was in 2019, where was the marker? It would have been 25, I think. 26? I don't know. It was in 2019. But they always nominate who would be what. And Libby's family rep was most likely to be adopted by her kid's family. So she's like, most of them aren't very nice, and that one was like super nice. I'm like, yeah, it really was. So I still keep in contact with Caitlin today. When we lost Libby, we had her funeral the 4th of July weekend in 2021. And there were 5 people there. 5 from Dance Marathon. So that's even after COVID, right? Because we built these relationships before COVID. We built the relationships and kept them going. So do everything in your power to keep these relationships going. Because even though it's hard to respond sometimes, we have life, we have other kids, right? It's not just the cancer kid usually. Sometimes it is, but typically it's not just that cancer kid. So we're trying to juggle cancer, we're trying to juggle work, we're trying to juggle more children, we're trying to juggle man children, right? Or wife children, like whatever it is. We're trying to juggle all of it. The last thing we're probably gonna do, but if you text, if you can find that other way to reach out, please do it. Because I would love for every family that's sitting over in level 11 right now to get to have the relationship and to feel as welcome in an organization as I do here. Because I do. I feel like I could reach out to, and you guys keep reaching out, which is really helpful, but I feel like there's a handful of people still in this organization, even though those starting ones that we had aren't here anymore. I feel like I could still reach out to a handful of people here, and I know that I can get what we need. I know that I can get that support. I know if there's a family on level 11 right now who needs a little extra, I have those contacts now that I can reach out to maybe say, hey, can you go over and see this family? They know you're coming. But don't let a non-responsive group detour you from trying to build that relationship. Because that is, and I'll be real honest with you, I'm guilty of it. They tried to put me with someone else other than Caitlin the second year, and I'm like, sorry, like I can't do this. I can't do this with like multiple, because we still had that, and they're like, okay, fine, go back to Caitlin. So I'm like, thanks. But it's really very important that you continue to try, because it would be a huge breakthrough for all of those going through active treatment right now, to be able to have that relationship and to have that bond that we had in 2018 and 2019 before COVID. So, does anyone have any, I would love to open it up to any questions for you guys. Any questions at all, what should we do, what shouldn't we do, how can we help, what eats at your brain all the time when you think about, you have a parent in front of you right now. I've been through every single phase, every single benefit that DM can offer, including the grant for a funeral. So, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was just given a microphone, cool. I just want to ask, I've been in that position before where I've had an unresponsive family, and it's really discouraging, but I still want to be there for them. What's that line between encouraging and annoying, when you keep reaching out?
That's fair. So I honestly, to me, if I keep seeing the email and I keep ignoring it, I think I'm the a-hole, right? But because if you're reaching out and you have that desire to build that relationship, I really think, and there is a lot going on. There's a lot, even me today, without a cancer child, I still have a lot going on day to day. I mean, sometimes it takes me 3 days to answer a text message, but I answer it because it's still showing as unread, and it makes me crazy when I have a number on there. So, but I think you reach out. I don't think that at the beginning, I don't think that it's enough. I think that at the beginning, you need to be pretty persistent. Once a week, email hey, just following up, if it's not a good time, and maybe try, I don't know if you guys are able to text. I just always would rather have a text.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, good. Do that. But that's something that's right there. And, it's hey, this is my class schedule. That's something else too. This is my schedule. If you guys are in the area, I would love to meet up, because if you can get that face-to-face meeting, it's going to be a lot easier to continue that communication via email or phone as well. But I think that's going to be the super important part too, is to try to get face-to-face, because most kiddos, even if they are done with treatment, most kiddos are coming back for follow-ups at some point throughout your school year. So that's a really good question, but don't be afraid. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, I have a new rep family this year, and so I just was wondering what is a welcoming way that you feel like you could be introduced to a new rep? Because I feel reaching out is kind of awkward. What would you prefer as a parent, us to reach out to you, questions that you would want us to ask you, or things you'd want us to say?
Yeah, and honestly, I think a good way to open that up is obviously introduce yourself, maybe what your focus is, what you're focusing on in education, things of that nature. But then also, give them your schedule. be open with that. Be like, hey, this is what my week looks like for this semester. Are you guys going to be in the area at all? I would love to meet up. Open that segue for that, to get that face-to-face meet, and after that, it's gonna be very easy. But I would definitely try to open that up and you lead that, like, hey, this is my schedule, are you gonna be in the area at all? You know, that's just how many months, we still have 4 months, right, basically. So are you gonna be here, and then chances are they're gonna be here in the next 4 months. So, over there especially. Whoever first.
So I understand that's great advice for rep families, but what would you recommend for us, some of us that are parents of DIH families? I don't know
Yeah.
what DIH is, because I
Tough.
want to meet them and they're not responsive right now, or talk to them, but like, I understand it can be hard, it's kind of break up a lot of those members of both parents. So I don't know the best respectful way to go about it. You know?
Yeah, and I'm probably a lot different than a lot of, with the exception of your family. I'm probably a lot different, but I'm a firm believer that if I stop talking about my daughter and if I stop spreading that story about Libby and stop spreading awareness, that people are gonna forget Libby. And when you have a child, like when you have kids, your sole purpose in life is to take care of your kids and make sure they stay well. When you lose a child, your sole purpose in life changes, and that's to make sure that nobody ever forgets that child. So that's kind of where I'm at, and not everybody is like that. And I know a lot of the DIH families, and maybe, you know, we have a group for DIH people on Facebook that we talk to. So maybe I can kind of help ease that in and just say, hey, I have some feedback, you know, and we've lost, unfortunately, level 11 has lost a lot of kids in the last 2 years. A lot. Like, a whole lot. It's been a really rough 2 years. And I do know, like, I keep in touch with a lot of them, and I do know that some of them do not want to talk about it. They're not at that point. And at that point, you know, maybe it is like, and I wouldn't say necessarily don't be as pushy as I would tell someone who has an active family, right? But just reach out and offer support. You know, just say, hey, and do the same thing. Like, hey, you know, are you in the area? Are you coming to the area? This is my schedule, and I would love to meet you. And, you know, if you're comfortable, get to know your DIH child better. And make it about that child, like make it about their interest, right? Like, hey, I would love to meet you. Like, I'm doing this for this reason, and maybe just lay out why are you in this role? Why are you doing this? And I think that would be really helpful too. But I will definitely try to segue that into that group a little bit more to say, hey, just some feedback, guys, like, and I can share maybe some who are not interested with you guys as well, and let you know. So I can see there might be a couple maybe that wouldn't be, so.
So I'm a first time rep, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room who are also that. So I was wondering, what are some things that your rep did that were special that like we could take into our role as a rep?
Yeah, clinic play dates. Those are great. So when we were at clinic, we got to the point where we were scheduling clinic times around Caitlin's school schedule so she could come. And that's super fun. One time Libby was having a procedure and Taylor and her brother Trey showed up randomly down on lower level 2, which is fun. Like, those visits are the big things, and that's why I think it's super important to really try to do that face-to-face meetup as soon as you can. Also, involve the whole family. So we have gotten birthday cards and Christmas cards and everything for Logan, for me, for Matt. Like, try to really involve the whole family so they know that, like, hey, this is not just, and honestly, I talked to Caitlin more than Libby did. I mean, Caitlin would come play with Libby, right? But I talk to Caitlin all the time. Like, we're in there, like, that's how we communicated. Obviously, it's through the parent, right? Not the child. But I think that is a big thing too, is to just really show how you're going to support the entire family too. You know, it's not just about the child, it's about helping you all through this, and what can I do best to help the entire family, because I know you have a lot going on. Yeah, of course.
If anyone thinks of anything else too, we can compile.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
reach out to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
So,
so much.
yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for